and the next in a series of educational workshops. My name is Jamie Austin, and with me today is Dan Stieglitz, president of CAS Worldwide, Process Improvement Specialists. Well, hello, Dan.
Hey, Jamie. Thanks for having me on this
It
podcast.
is it is deeply my pleasure to have you here and to have people learn what it is to do process improvement. I say that to people and they say, "What do you do?" I say, "Oh, we do process improvement." And they go, "Okay, can you kind of explain that?" So can you explain to us what do you mean by process improvement?
Sure. So basically, at CS Worldwide, we are consultants and we come into companies that are either stagnated or growing or making changes. And through review of how they do their day-to-day business, everything from sales and marketing through shipping and order taking and inventory management, all the way back, and everything leads back to accounting. We review holistically the processes and find ways to make them more efficient, more effective. And we used to say and automate these processes using software as a tool. Many times we found that when we say automation, people automatically think, oh, great, I can fire my staff, put this in, and away it goes. And therefore, we've changed our terminology to be data transformation. So we transfer information from the written, the manual, the Excel spreadsheet into tools that allow you, and I know, Jamie, you love this, allow you to enter the data once and use it many times. So that's what we're about. What makes us different is we are able to look at both the people, the process, and the technology, and see ways to improve it to get our clients more productive, reduce their costs, and increase their profitability. We are both accountants by trade and technologists, so it gives us the best of both worlds in helping them.
Okay, I think that kind of helps us out, understand it a little bit better. Now I have a better understanding of process improvement. But could you tell me a little bit more? What is a process, or could you define a process?
Sure. A process is simply a series of steps that a stakeholder or group of stakeholders will perform on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to achieve a goal. It's the fundamental building blocks of making sure that the right tools are in place, change management of how we used to do the process to how we will do the process, and how we will manage data is used. So by defining these steps, we can then take these steps and apply them to tools, whether they're visual tools, whether they're automated software tools, or whether they're the written tools, because some things still need to be written down in order to get a job done. But when we talk about data transformation or automation, there are ways to document that and to do that, which helps that process be streamlined. And that's what we help companies do.
So I got to go back to you because you're right. It's one of my favorite expressions is enter once and use many times. So you're saying like if you document the process once, then people are able to repeat it consistently every time.
100%. And
Okay.
a document, you should realize that a document becomes what we call standard operating procedure. And standard operating procedure in organizations and companies, they're living and breathing documents, because we should be able to repeat it one or a million times and expect the same results. But sometimes things come into our environment which cause us to have to change management, our process, and we need a vehicle to be able to do that. So how we document our process and how we change our process is very important. We actually use some tools for that. We have a product called Sweet Process, which allows the company to document all their processes, share them with various people who are responsible for those processes, and make changes to those processes.
Okay, do you have an example of that?
Sure. A very simple example. So we do an example of something that everybody knows how to do. But as for an example, we've documented that. Can you show that to the people there, Jamie? Can you bring it up?
I certainly can try. Is this what you're talking about?
Yes, it's
Making
just,
morning coffee.
yes, it's as simple as making
Highly,
your morning coffee.
highly technical, requires a senior level skill person. But okay, I take the bait. Why a cup of coffee? Doesn't everybody know how to make a cup of coffee?
Absolutely. Everybody knows how to make a cup of coffee, but when I get a new employee, and we're all about optimizing efficiency, and now the new employee comes in and we tell that new employee, whether it's your receptionist, your office manager, your controller, who's ever responsible for making the morning coffee for everybody, we tell them, go make coffee. And they go, okay, so where's the kitchen? Where's the coffee pot? What coffee do I use? So we're able to use this tool to not only to tell them where things are, but actually show them. We can put what we call job aids in. Job aids are pictures, videos, descriptions that allow them to easily know and understand how the steps taken in how to make that coffee. So in our example here, we show them the coffee maker they're going to use. So now they have a visual. We tell them how to get to the kitchen, as simple as that is. We tell them,
I don't see the "you are here"
no,
sticker.
we'll have to make a
But
change.
okay, so they find the kitchen.
We tell them what to do, which is fill the pot with water and how much water to fill. And we tell them which coffee to use. Now, with Sweet Process, some of our automation allows us to capture data, so it can be entered once and used many times. So in our Sweet Process, it's not only a documentation tool, but it's a little bit more robust. So it's not Word or PDFs. It's actually an aid. So when they're entering putting water in, or they're picking their coffee they're going to use for the day, they can actually enter on the screen what coffee they used, how many gallons they used. And then at the completion of that, they can send that to my ERP system. So now I can deplenish my inventory for what I've used to make that cup of coffee. At the end, when I'm all done, and I push the button that says coffee's made, it can alert others that it's time to go to the coffee. It can go to the kitchen and have a cup of coffee.
So I walk into so receptionist makes this cup of coffee, and on their phone they entered that they put the water in, that they entered that they picked the proper blend of coffee, and at the end it says that this has been completed, and so that the rest of us know we can go get our coffee. But and we're using, again, coffee is a silly and simple example of it, but think of it if it's something that's far more complicated. But the fact that you have a tool, an app on your phone that's recording that these things are done, confirmation that things are done. Unlock the front door, lock the front door. Think of all the different processes that you do as a company that need to be confirmed. And that, I guess using something like this lets you know and can notify people that this process was completed. Very cool.
And what's really important about notifying people is many times within a process, a handoff is important. So obviously I can't drink the coffee before it's made. So I need to know when it's made. So you have to tell me so I can start doing my job, which in this case is drinking coffee. right? Or maybe
And
getting the bagels or warming the bagels for the rest of the team so that, we can
and
get
you
silly as
don't,
we
and I'm
want.
jumping in on this, and you don't want to have to go visit the kitchen multiple times and find out that the coffee's not ready yet. That's a waste of time, and it's a high level of inefficiency. And again, we're making fun from the standpoint of making the coffee, but yes, think of it for every other process that you have in your job, in your work, and how the next step is dependent upon the last step, and how this is a means of notifying all that. Very cool. So
A process.
insanity is the opposite of process improvement. And what I mean by that is insanity is what? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Correct.
Process is doing the same thing and expecting the same results.
Absolutely. And it's funny you bring that up because we always have the do's and don'ts to changing a process, right? So there are certain things you want to do and certain things you don't want to do when you're making a change to a process. And you do that so you don't become insane by afterwards by implementing a new process, not having the proper change management, and then running into what we call the brick walls. I think I have a slide on
So
that, Jamie, if you'd want to share it.
I do. That was very good. Thank you for sending that to me. So let's see. The do's and don'ts of creating and managing a process. So let's see. Don't safeguard your assets by using personnel alone. In other words, don't tell Joe the password to the safe and expect him to remember it.
Correct.
All right. And you say,
Safeguard your assets by putting in proper internal controls into your systems and your personnel, right? So making sure that there are two areas that know the password to the safe, because if Joe, we never say gets hit by a bus. If Joe goes out and wins the lottery and leaves us, forgot to tell us because he's now out in Bora Bora, that safe combination, there is another area that has it securely put for us.
and I know exactly where to keep that handwritten document that's going to tell us what the password, what the code combination to the safe is.
Under your keyboard.
No, in the safe.
Oh, love it.
Because only Joe can get it.
That's right. It's
Uh,
safeguarded.
all right, which brings us, I think, to our next don't, which you say is don't create data silos where each member has their own set of data kept specifically for them. Joe
Yes, that
can't
goes
be
back,
the only one with that combination to the safe.
right. And that goes back to making sure that we can enter data once, but use it many times. Too many times I'm hearing from management, either I got to knock on somebody's door, I got to call somebody, or I got to ask them for information before I am able to see if an order is shipped, if something happens. So we don't want to just have one person with this information. We want to make it available to everybody. Visibility is important. Of course, security is, and not everybody is going to look at everything. So we always build it with secure roles. But this way, we're only entering it once, using it many times.
Again, don't put the combination to the safe under your keyboard and don't post it on the refrigerator. All right, number 3, avoid using email, Outlook, to manage workflows. Managing this way will create both silos and bottlenecks in productivity.
Yes,
So I shouldn't keep my passwords in a folder in my email.
absolutely. Well, and you shouldn't use emails as a tool to see how many times that password is changed or who changed the password last, because I sent a reply all to everybody, because so many times as we all know, we have thousands of emails. Things get lost in an email. And again, when we talk about silos, it's really easy to take that reply all and just hit reply. And now somebody who's been in a chain all along falls out of the chain and no longer is part of the conversation. So we need a way that we can train people on best practices on how to make sure that they're not just using their own little ways to complete a process.
I think of group, a group email, a group contact. And if somebody gets added to the group or subtracted from the group, you got to remember to go into the group and make that change. Otherwise, you start sending out group emails to people who either are no longer in the group and they don't want them, or you're forgetting somebody. So again, maintaining the data is good.
Well, and look at
All
all
right.
the time it takes if you were, again, we'll use the simple thing is, has an order shipped, right? No, it hasn't shipped yet. It'll ship tomorrow. We had a little problem. This is what happened. As opposed to now that's 3 or 4 layers deep as this shipped. So as opposed to putting it into an order management system where I can go in, pull the order up and see the workflow of what's happened on that order.
All right. Number 4, don't cut corners and just eliminate expenses. Take a target approach to ensure that expenses are proper and justifiable. So in other words, just because you don't need that step and you eliminate it doesn't mean that somebody else didn't need it.
Correct. And it's automating a process doesn't always mean that day one I'm going to see a reduction in my overall expenses. You always have to look at automation, data transformation, and standardization of a process as a long-term investment, and you will get ROI by implementing proper procedures will bring down those costs and increase profitability. But you need to budget for them. You just can't say, oh, we won't do this now, we won't do that now, and take it out.
All right. And then your last one, don't automate a process until you have created a proper, I like this, process map to ensure that the automation will not create new bottlenecks and issues that may now be undetectable. What does that mean?
So when we go in and we review, again, that goes back to that holistic review, that overall approach. So don't do things in a silo. Don't say, oh, I want to change how we manage our orders without talking to sales and marketing who create the orders, inventory management who look at the orders and use them to process shipments, and accounting who record those orders. So don't do anything in a silo. Do a process map, see all the areas that are affected, make sure they're included in the process change. They become part of the solution, not part of the problem. And this way they can review where things would go wrong, where bottlenecks would happen, and you could remediate properly.
It reminds me of something we did the other day, and that is sometimes asking the simple question of why helps clarify and understand the reason. So you're saying, instead of just, I don't need that process and getting rid of it, it's ask, why is that process in our list, on our map? And then you find out, well, it's not because I need it, but it's because you need it.
Right.
Very
and sometimes you may find when we do process maps that you're doing things only for yourself, and it's only because you were taught that way, and other processes have made it obsolete, and all of a sudden you go, hey, maybe I can eliminate some things in my process. I just did it because I thought people needed it, but now I'm finding out they don't.
So there are times where saying, that's because this is the way we've done it forever,
Yes.
has a validity to it, because somewhere along the line there were reasons for it to be done that way. But at the same time, There are times where you say, well, that's the way I do it that way because that's the way the person before me did it. Doesn't mean that you should be continuing to do it that way. Either way, you need to look and ask why. All
Right.
right.
We educate our clients to say, what got me here may not take me there. And that's why I have to look at it.
So we talked about a while ago automating payables, which I think is one of the more fascinating processes in the world, and especially accounting. In that, like, how many people don't even have paper checks anymore?
Right.
And in the personal world, you know, people kids don't even have cash. Everything's on a debit card or something. But in the business world, still the bulk of stuff is paid for by an invoice and a paper check. And I know you've talked about that and you use that as an example of a process. So let's step past the simple making of coffee in the morning, and let's talk about the complicated process of paying a bill. And I have a slide for you. So can you explain this to me?
Absolutely. So, paying a bill, right? So we know there are many steps involved in paying a bill. And here I've documented these steps with the pictures that are necessary. So we get an invoice in the mail. We open that mail. We try and tie it to a PO. We then route it from area to area to get it approved and coded. Then we may push it against our budget, put it into our accounting system, post it to our GL, create a check, a paper check, print that check, send it around for various people to sign, and then file all this paperwork. And if we get questions on it, research it, right? So this piece of paper will start as one piece of paper, will grow and be in all different areas of my company over its next life until it hits accounting, when accounting's going to pay the bill. And we work with our clients a lot in trying to not only automate this, but we question our clients in respect, well, when the invoice comes in, where are you recording it? And most of them say, I'm not recording it anywhere. I give it to the approver to approve. As soon as they give it back to me, I'll pay it. If a vendor calls, they're not really calling the person who's approving it. They're calling accounting, and accounting's going to go, I don't know if I have it. Let me call that person I gave it to, who's got it on his desk, who haven't touched it for 3 weeks, and see if he can find it. And then he goes through the papers and he goes, oh, yeah, here it is. I'll approve it for you now. So now I go back and I have to call the vendor and tell them, oh, yeah, we got it. I just got it approved. Let me put it in the system. Let me cut a paper check. Let me walk that check now to signers, get it signed, put it in an envelope, mail it to you. A very complicated process with a lot of touches. When we automate a process, we're going to get rid of those touches.
All right. Well, before you go there, so I'm thinking about this piece of paper or these pieces of paper that are flowing through the system. That all sounds good if we all work in the same building. What if we have people who work elsewhere? Now we're starting to talk about mailing things from one office to another or things like that, such
Yep.
as
Or again,
my expense report, even worse.
right. Or
Right.
again, we talked about don't use Outlook as a workflow, right? So I will tell you, a lot of companies out there say, well, what I do is when I get an invoice in from a client or a vendor, I'll scan it in. I'll then forward that email, that I scan document, to the approver. Now I'm waiting for them to approve. Maybe I'll put a follow-up, again, trying to create workflow within Outlook for me to follow up on that. And then again, if the vendor calls, let me search Outlook and see if I can find that invoice. But maybe in that time frame, the person I sent it to goes, oh, I'm not responsible to approve this anymore. So forward this to John. They'll forward it to John. Now our workflow and our tasks have grown exponentially, all in that one email. And that thread just keeps growing and growing. And every time you get a question, you go into the email, you got to read the whole thread and see what actually happened. So we want to avoid all when we
I'm
automate it.
just thinking of so many different things, like working, is the invoice goes to accounting. Accounting then has to send it to the approver. The approver is out for a day or two. It sits on their desk. It gets buried. A week later, as you say, the company, or a month later, the vendor goes, "How come I haven't gotten paid yet?" You go, "Well, I haven't gotten the invoice yet." And meanwhile, the invoice has been sitting on that poor man Joe's desk for a month because he got buried under 100 other things. And then you say you don't follow up on it. Well, we're in the accounting department and I'm writing 50 checks a day. I got bills, I got 50 bills to pay each day. I can't remember which bill, is or isn't, hasn't come in. So now I'm waiting for the vendor to call me to yell at me that they haven't gotten paid. It just makes everybody look stupid. So
Yes. And it
what's the
makes
solution?
for what we call a very reactive process. I only touch the paper that I need when there's a reaction. Somebody's called, somebody's giving it back to me to pay, but I no longer can be proactive and move it forward. So I'm potentially putting out fires every time that document comes to me, whether it's to get in the system to get it paid because I may miss a discount, or whether it's to answer a question about it, or just to process it generally.
Well, hold on a second.
I'm holding.
Hello. So Dan, all this paperwork, and I'm thinking, back in my days of sales, when my expense report went traveling around the company, wondering when am I going to get reimbursed for the money that I had to lay out on the company's behalf when I was on a business trip. So you got a screen here for me. Walk me through this. Automated payables.
Yeah, so I've taken the same data flow that I showed you previously to all those manual steps. And by automation, data transformation, we can eliminate more than 3/4 of the steps that are done. And how does that work? Well, we use software as a tool to help with our workflow. We have that expense report, that vendor invoice electronically mailed to us, and our software is sitting there waiting for invoices to come in. As soon as the invoice arrives, if it can be, and 90% of them can be electronically scanned, it'll actually scan it into the software, send it to an approver, because based on the vendor, we know who is responsible to approve an invoice, and record it in a system that shows us the invoice number, the invoice date, the vendor, and who is responsible to approve this invoice. Now we're waiting for that vendor or that employee who's a supervisor to approve that expense report, that invoice. At any time, I could set the software up to poke the person who's approver to say, you've got 3 invoices in here that need approval. So we can manage electronically how the task is going to move, so that paperwork doesn't sit on his desk and go to the bottom of the pile. It comes to the top. And we can do that through an email, through a text, or just through the software. Once the approval is made, then it'll come back to accounting, who can automatically code it within the system, because we've already given codes, could set up codes by vendor. We've already got the approval. It automatically can then be entered into our system by the software. And all we do is we review the invoice and post it to our general ledger. What that will do is our general ledger and our accounting system will pick it up and say, okay, now we could pay that invoice. So on our next check run, it gets paid, and it can be paid electronically through the software as an ACH.
Oh, you ruined it for me. I wanted to hold out on that one. Then hold on that one for a second. But yes, so I'm thinking again, back in my travel days, I used to travel and I would stuff all those paper receipts in my pocket, in my briefcase. And sure enough, when I'd get home and I'd be in the office and I would do my expense report on a piece of paper, on an Excel spreadsheet, and I'm filling it all out, I don't know how, I'd lose a receipt. And now, you can't find it, a taxi ride or something. And, sometimes it's pennies, but sometimes it's become more. We then put in travel expense reporting tools with an automated expense system. And now after every event that I had and I incurred a receipt, I was either able to email that receipt to my system or take a picture of that receipt. And I would then able to document that. So I would, it would read the receipt. It knew who the vendor was. I would put in who the client I was with. I do all this on my phone. I can in fact do this on my phone after a lunch appointment, right at the table, in the car, in the parking lot when I'm ready to go, or whatever else. And I was able to do all this, and it would compile my expense report. And then I would be able to go and view the whole thing, say, yep, that's everything. I push a button and it would electronically submit it with all the receipts to the accounting department. Well, actually, take it back, to my approver. My approver was able to view it all on their phone or their computer. They would approve it. It would then go into accounting. Accounting would sign off on it. They would then charge it off to the GL, and then they would push a button and send it off to get paid, or however that is done. It made my life as a traveling salesperson easier. And so I'm assuming, I'm taking that and saying that same thing now happens with every one of your vendors. So rather than your vendor saying, I call accounting to get a bill paid that's overdue, and they say, we don't even know where the bill is anymore. We haven't seen it in 3 weeks. And it just makes everybody frustrated, unhappy. Now it's, hey, I haven't gotten paid that invoice. Accounting goes in, looks at it in the payables, outstanding payables ledger, in the automated payables, says, oh yeah, it's on Joe's desk. There he is again. Joe hasn't approved it, and he's been pinged every day for the last 3 weeks to say, you got to approve this. So we'll go and get Joe and see what's going on with it. And if Joe did have a problem, there was a means of disputing it and taking it from there. So amazing how it's all about both sides of the coin. From the company standpoint, it's improving your operational efficiencies and processing things much more quickly, much less costly. And from the end user side, it's, hey, I get my bills paid on time.
Right.
My invoice is paid on time. Let's go back to, because you kind of, you gave away the store on that one. And that is, you get to the end of the whole thing here and you go, okay, it gets into accounting, and they write they print a check, which is probably the most costly way of paying a bill, because now you had to produce the multi-part copy of that check. You have to keep your copy and file it. You've got to take it to the boss to sign. You got to fold it in half and stuff it in an envelope, and you got to put a stamp on it, and you got to mail it, and you got to hope the U.S. Post Office, who is so reliable, they are, that it gets to them, within a reasonable amount of time. What's a better way of paying that bill?
Well, there are a few. The best way, and that's what you're leading, what I had mentioned and gave away the store, was by electronically sending a file to your bank that says, cut this as an ACH, a wire transfer from one to the other. Lots and lots of companies are going that way. But companies who still are into that check writing, and they feel that their vendors want a check, the way we can get around that paper intensive processes, these AP automation softwares, they come with the ability for them to write the check. So you basically process it in your accounting system, just saying, I want to release the check, and get it approved by a check signer. It's then sent to the AP automation software, where they actually print and fold and mail the checks for you, making that process much more efficient.
Very cool. Again, it's all of this is about making it easier for you and better for the customer or the vendor. All right. Well, that was fascinating. I really think it was great how you took us through the process of process and how and why it's worth putting a process in place. Again, it's do the same thing every day and get the same result. It's the same in, again, as what you're saying, in the data transmission. I like that data transformation, but it's the
Information.
same in that data transmission as it is if you're in manufacturing. You know, and that the whole concept of manufacturing is that, you know, you're going to make a million widgets and you're going to make them all exactly the same. Isn't
Right.
it the same as McDonald's, where you can go to any McDonald's anywhere in the United States and they're going to make, you know, they're going to cook that burger at the same amount of time and they're going to package that in the fries in the same, you know, package, and that it's all the same. It's the same. Isn't that what Ray Kroc's whole concept was?
Hmm.
You know, is doing the same thing every day, everywhere, and so that makes it the most efficient, cost-effective way possible. The same holds true for data transformation, or I like data transition. Is that fair to say too? Data
Sure.
transmission. I like that. That how the data flows through the system, and that's what you're talking about. You are all about processing the data as it goes through the system. I think you even said it earlier today, from marketing and sales to order taking to production to delivery to accounting, so that at the end of the day, you produce the product or service the most effective way possible and you know what you did. Well, thank you very much. You like how I answered that for you? I didn't even let you answer because you're going to go, yes.
Yes.
See, I knew it. Well, that was interesting. And so, folks, if you want to, if I should say, if you would like some help in data transformation, in moving that information through your system more easily, more effectively, more cost effectively, and that all drives to better product, better service, better customer service, and a better profit. If you'd like to have all of those things, give me a buzz. My name is Jamie Austin. I'll leave my information at the end, and I will make an introduction to Dan Stieglitz, president of CAS Worldwide, and we will get you on the path to success. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Jamie. Have a great day.